A winter weather wallop is on the way. The city outlining how it's preparing for the biggest snowstorm of the season to hit the GTA later today. Good afternoon. We begin with a major weather warning. A storm system is expected to bring heavy snowfall, making for a messy drive on the roads.
In response, the city is outlining its plan to deal with the snow, including some restrictions. CTV's Allison Hurst is live with the details. Allison, back from mat leave and getting to talk about a whole lot of snow.
Absolutely. And city officials say that this is an all-hands-on-deck approach as they deal with this monstrous midweek storm that's rolling right towards us here in the GTA. An army of plows stand ready to deploy for a winter wallop.
So all the crews are already prepared, assigned to activate when they get called out.
Hundreds of staff and 1,400 pieces of equipment are in place.
Equipment that will service all of the roads, the cycling infrastructure, sidewalks, multi-use trails, laneways, and whatnot. So our focus over the next few days will be salting and plowing.
Environment Canada estimates between 2 and 4 centimeters per hour will fall at peak times, with accumulations expected to reach up to 25 centimeters.
As a result of the fact that we will be getting quite considerable amount of snow, multiple rounds will be activated, which means you will see the equipment cross the city throughout the evening, into the early morning, into Thursday, and into Friday. Okay, so it's going to take at least three rounds, if not more, to service all of the locations.
The city has declared a major snowstorm condition, which means parking on designated snow routes is prohibited. The declarations come into effect at 10 p.m. tonight.
This is a designated snow route sign, and it's on arterials that are currently designated snow routes. And the reason I wanted to share it with everyone this morning is because these are up and are always up. And so you need to pay attention if you go to park your car later this afternoon or this evening, that there's not one of these signs on the route, because this is the location where we would designate the major snow route and where we would be enforcing that after 10 p.m. tonight.
Because of the amount of snow and temperatures, city officials say snow removal will likely begin early next week, and they have opened some snow dump sites in advance. The storm is set to hit us sometime around 3 or 4, so just in time for that afternoon rush. So city officials are reminding everyone to plan around that. Give yourselves a little extra time if you're trying to get around the city, and of course drive to the conditions. Reporting live, I'm Allison Hurst. Michelle, back to you.
Thanks, Allison, and welcome back. Pearson Airport says airlines are already canceling some flights in anticipation of this dumping of snow.
We ask passengers to frequently check either TorontoPearson.com or their air carrier's website for the status of their flights. As the forecast evolves, things could evolve through the day.
Airport officials say they're expecting up to 25 centimeters of snow to fall there as well. They say Pearson will likely have limited capacity for takeoffs and departures tomorrow, with carriers left to choose which flights operate.
As for today, Metrolink says GO Transit and Up Express are currently operating on a regular schedule, with severe weather expected later today. Customers are encouraged to take extra care while traveling and plan ahead. Updates for the evening commute will be revealed online.
And as the TTC prepares to keep surface routes running, it's also canceling some overnight work on the subway to free up employees and redeploy shuttle buses to local routes. Service will no longer end at 11 p.m. between Bloor, Yonge, and Osgood stations on Line 1.
We have more news in a moment, but first, here's a live look at the city this afternoon. As we like to say, I guess the calm before the storm, but it does look a little bit gloomy out there. A major snow event expected across the city and province beginning later this afternoon and continuing throughout the night, so the commute home is a major concern. Lindsay Morrison is here with a look at the current conditions, and you've been warning us for a few days.
Yes, this has been one that we've been watching for some time now, Nathan, and for good reason. We are under a snowfall warning here in the city of Toronto. Those communities also under the snowfall warning you can see here in white. In blue, winter storm warning, and we've also got a freezing rain warning. We're going to break this all down for you coming up. All is pretty quiet right now on the satellite and radar, but that storm, the leading leading edge of it is approaching southwestern Ontario, and it is a moisture-laden system. So we are expecting heavy, wet snow, along with possible mixed precipitation, strong winds too, and as mentioned, not one, but two commutes are going to be impacted by this one. Right now, it is -6 degrees in the city of Toronto. It was a bit of a chilly start to the day. There is a wind chill. Overnight tonight, the temperature will rise, contributing to that heavy, wet snow and the mixed precip too. Lots to discuss. It's all coming up in your weather forecast. For now, Michelle, I'll send it over to you.
Thanks, Lindsay. And still ahead, Canada's 13 premiers in Washington to try and prevent a trade war. We'll have those details a little later in the newscast.
A man in his 60s is in hospital after being injured in a hit and run in Etobicoke. Police say the man was struck shortly after 9 last night while walking near Finch and Humberline Drive. He was taken to hospital with serious injuries. Police say a small black SUV was spotted leaving the scene, though they've since located the driver. They're asking anyone with information to come forward.
And a man in his 40s is in hospital with serious injuries after being struck by a vehicle in the Bay Street and Lakeshore Boulevard area. This happened shortly before 9:30 last night. Police say the driver involved remained unseen. So far, there's been no word on possible charges.
Liberty Village and Fort York residents are expressing alarm about the rising number of coyote attacks.
The most recent incident happening earlier this week. CTV's Beth McDonnell has been following this story and has more.
Traumatized and injured, Anne Salvinayagam's dog Gregorio is recovering from a coyote attack.
So when the coyote lunged, this was where I saw his tooth kind of go in.
The 5-year-old terrier Cross was also bitten a second time and scratched. It happened Monday night in June Colwood Park in the Bathurst and Lakeshore area. Salvinayagam says he was on her hands-free leash when she looked away for about 5 seconds.
And then the coyote was mid-lunge. And so we were playing tug of war with my dog, and I'm trying to get him back. And then he was clawing at my dog as well, and then I was able to kind of scoop him up. There was 4 of us screaming this entire time, and the coyote did not care.
Her name was Amber. I feel horrible that she's passed in such a manner.
Ruby Cooner's 13-year-old dog died after she was attacked in nearby Ordnance Triangle Park in December. Cooner is part of a new group called the Coyote Safety Coalition, documenting coyote incidents in Liberty Village and Fort York since November.
42 incidents. These are not sightings. So these are people being chased, dogs being injured, and some sort of interaction happening with the coyote that was negative.
In a statement, local city councillor Asma Malik says coyotes have been displaced from their more green habitats without proper consideration by provincial redevelopment, like at Ontario Place, and are dangerously entering our growing neighbourhoods. However, the Ministry of Natural Resources says the province has no evidence of displacement of coyotes from the Ontario Place site. The ministry has been working with the City of Toronto staff to provide advice on preventing and managing human-coyote conflicts. Malik says immediate coyote measures are being taken, which include increased staff conducting daily patrols, organizing a community town hall, providing a dedicated means for reporting incidents, and advancing a downtown coyote action plan.
This was a completely avoidable situation. I think the decision to put in the spa was reckless because it didn't factor in everything that would get turned up.
This is a lesson that the province and the city can learn, where if we keep destroying wildlife habitat, it does impact residents.
Both Salvinayagam and Cooner are heartbroken and devastated over the coyote attacks on their beloved pets. They want action to make their neighborhood safe. Beth McDonnell, CTV News.
We take you north to City Hall because they've officially approved the budget for 2025.
The spending plan comes with a significant tax hike. CTV's Natalie Johnson's live at City Hall with more details. Natalie.
Yeah, Nathan, the big budget debate went late into the night here at City Hall last evening. Ultimately, only a handful of councillors voting against the mayor's big tax hike. Homeowners will be on the hook for 7% more this year. Toronto taxes are once again going up after Mayor Olivia Chow secured support late last night for her big budget.
People are having a hard time, and we need to fix this problem together. We need to rebuild this city together.
The spending plan features a TTC fare freeze, expanded student nutrition programs, increased library hours, and more traffic wardens.
We've built a budget here that is a caring budget. It meets the challenges that the city faces.
But it comes at a cost. A 6.9% residential property tax hike that will cost the average homeowner $268 more this year, on the heels of a 9.5% increase last year.
When property taxes were increased by 10%, Mayor Chow said that it was because of the fiscal hole she inherited. Unfortunately, it seems like she spent the last year digging her own hole, and now she needs taxpayers' help to get out of it.
The mayor grilled by her critics on the need to raise taxes.
Can we not reduce this budget and hold the line?
This budget is fiscally responsible.
It comes as Council and all of Canada brace for the economic impacts of U.S. tariffs. The mayor passing a plan to remove Tesla from the city program that subsidizes EVs for Toronto taxi drivers.
For the next 4 years at least, we're going to face constant uncertainty and threats, I expect, from Mr. Trump and perhaps Mr. Musk.
There are things that we can do to make ourselves more competitive.
A push by Councillor Brad Bradford to combat the trade war with a 25% cut to industry and small business taxes did not pass.
There were opportunities to make the city more affordable, to protect 125,000 jobs, things that we could do in response to the uncertain economic times right now. And obviously you saw the majority of council vote against those efforts. I think it's uncomfortable for them.
Council did, though, support the mayor's residential tax hike, promising better services.
Getting time back, feeling safe again, knowing the city servers will be there when we need them most.
In exchange for paying more.
If they see our Toronto getting better, then people understand that they're making good investments. So time is going to tell.
Time now for City Hall to start the spending. Another big budget in the books. And Budget Chief Shelley Carroll said after the vote last night that she hopes that next year's property tax hike will not be quite as high. Next year's budget is, of course, the last one in this term before the mayor and council face re-election. Reporting live at City Hall, I'm Natalie Johnson. Nathan, over to you.
Thank you, Natalie. Turning now to a residential fire in Oshawa early this morning.
Fire crews battled flames at a home that was also the scene of a homicide only a few months earlier. CTV's Janice Golding is live at the scene this hour with the very latest. Janice.
Hi, Michelle. That's right. We've learned that a fire here in Oshawa took place in the same home where a woman was killed late last year. In late November, a 48-year-old woman was found suffering from obvious signs of trauma. Her 41-year-old husband would be charged with first-degree murder. Despite the fact an elderly woman and two 5-year-old children were living in the home at the time, the house was unoccupied at the time of this morning's fire. First responders say firefighters from Central East Division attended a call in the area of Eulalie and Huron Street at around 5:15 a.m. Oshawa Fire Services tweeted that crews took a defensive position and aerial operations were underway at the time. The fire was knocked down relatively quickly, and fire crews left the scene at around 11 this morning.
I just seen it this morning, and I thought, okay, I looked out my window. They had flames shooting way up, had the road all blocked off, and I thought, I can't go near there.
Some pyroman knew that there is an abandoned house. As far as I know, nobody lived in that house.
I came around the corner just to walk my dog and saw this again, and I thought, oh, Lord, help us all.
At this time, no injuries have been reported. Cause of the blaze has not been determined. Reporting live, I'm Janice Golding. Now back to Michelle and Nathan.
Thank you, Janice. Canada's 13 premiers are in Washington, D.C. today to try and prevent a trade war.
It's a joint effort to push back on U.S. President Donald Trump's plans for tariffs. CTV's Judy Trins in Washington with the latest.
Some of the premiers arrived as early as Monday for this unified trade mission. They are on what Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew calls a charm offensive to convince Americans that Donald Trump's proposed tariffs are bad for business, bad for Americans, and bad for their pocketbooks. But even as they prepare to fight, Donald Trump keeps on putting them back on their heels. Just on Monday, Trump announced that he intends on putting 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum products from across the world. And then last night, he said those tariffs would be stacked on top of levies on all Canadian products. That means 50% tariffs. Now, the deadline, the so-called 30-day reprieve, will end on March 12th. So by March 12th, there could be 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum. Given such an escalation, Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc, who met with the premiers this morning, was asked when Canada would launch retaliatory measures. Take a listen.
We're not looking to go ahead of the United States in some kind of tariffs. We don't think tariffs are the way to proceed. So we're certainly not going to do anything before the Americans make their ultimate decision. And what the Americans have said to us privately and what they've said publicly is that we have a number of weeks to work together. And President Trump's words were very precise, to structure an economic deal with Canada. So that's exactly the conversation that we're going to continue today. But our focus is on avoiding the tariffs and strengthening the economic partnership. So that wouldn't be particularly constructive as an approach in the next few weeks.
Minister LeBlanc will meet with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick later this afternoon. The premiers want LeBlanc to get a clear sense of what the president is going to do next and what he wants. That may include starting renegotiations of the U.S.-Canada-Mexico Free Trade Agreement ahead of schedule. Judy Trin, CTV News, Washington, D.C.
And while Doug Ford's in Washington, other Ontario political leaders are continuing to make the rounds on the election campaign trail.
It comes as the provincial race ramps up. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris has been following it all. She joins us live with the latest. Siobhan.
Well, Premier Doug Ford is acting as Premier today in Washington alongside other provincial and territorial leaders. He says success on that trip to him looks like walking away without tariffs. But at this point, he isn't sure that American decision makers really understand the damage that could be done from tariffs.
Inflation will happen. Interest rates will go up. Plants will be closed on both sides of the border. And the more we communicate, the better it is. We're down here to listen to our U.S. colleagues. We're down here to communicate.
This side of the border, Mike Schreiner was unveiling the Green Party platform this morning called A Plan for Fairness. It does things like cut income taxes for people earning under $65,000 a year, doubling ODSP and OW rates, and canceling big projects like Highway 413 and the Bradford Bypass. The Liberal leader had a striking display today, 100 chairs with horror stories from hospitals. She's laying out a promise to end hallway health care. It includes getting more Ontarians connected with family doctors so they don't have to turn to hospitals as much.
We're going to invest in hiring more nurses and PSWs and paying them a living wage no matter where they work so that they can go about and do the job that they love. And 3, we're going to invest in our hospitals so that we can provide the care that is needed. We're going to grow the capacity, and it'll help our economy grow as well.
Our students and educators deserve fairness in our school system, and that's why we will reverse Doug Ford's $1,500 per pupil funding cut to education in the province of Ontario.
NDP leader Marit Stiles doesn't have any public events today, but her party did show a video online saying the Liberals don't have any credibility in ending hallway health care since it's a problem that began under a Liberal government. Reporting live from Queen's Park, I'm Siobhan Morris. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Siobhan. And the Ontario Leaders Debate, mark your calendar, is Monday at 6:30 p.m. You can watch live right here on CTV and CP24 and stream on all of our digital platforms.
Despite the concerted efforts by Canadian officials, the White House is raising the stakes on tariffs against our goods. As mentioned, a White House official confirming the 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum will be stacked on top of the other 25% tariffs on Canadian goods.
Now, the Prime Minister is in Brussels, where he met with European leaders today. And following the talks, Justin Trudeau addressed those looming U.S. tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum.
Wherever Canadians are, whether it's premiers in Washington today or officials or ministers exchanging with their counterparts in the U.S. administration, we bring up just how interconnected our countries are. And the fact, for example, that we're talking about potential job losses in the U.S. Based on these tariffs on steel and aluminum is not mere speculation. We know that that will happen because that's exactly what happened last time tariffs were brought in on steel and aluminum in 2018. There were job losses in the United States. 75,000 fewer jobs in the U.S. because of tariffs they brought in on steel and aluminum, and those tariffs were even lower than the ones they're contemplating bringing in right now.
Trudeau reiterated today Canada doesn't want to impose retaliatory tariffs on the United States, but will do so if necessary. CTV's Scott Hurst is following this for us. It's keeping us on our toes here in the news business. Scott, the Trump administration seems to be doubling down on the tariff threat. We mentioned the stacking there. What's the latest from the White House?
Good afternoon, Michelle. Doubling down on the tariff threat and adding to what the Prime Minister said there in Brussels. Regardless of how high the tariffs might go, he said, Canada will have a response in kind, will be ready with retaliatory tariffs. But what we're hearing from the Trump administration could potentially be crippling for several industries in our country if there is the threat, of course, of 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum. And then we're hearing on top of that, 25% tariffs on all Canadian goods could then be stacked. So we're looking potentially at 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum, and the whole pitch from Canadian officials going south of the border right now, whether it's the premiers or other people that are working in the Liberal government. Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc also in Washington, D.C. today, meeting with Trump officials later this afternoon with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and the Prime Minister there in Brussels, hoping to get the message across to American lawmakers, American business people, that this will not only be hurtful for Canadians, but also hurt Americans and the American economy as well, Michelle.
Scott, makes you wonder, is this just a negotiating tactic or something more? Meantime, every level of government is concerned. They know what's at stake, and we were talking about the Canadian premiers, all of them in Washington. Let's talk about what they're hoping to accomplish.
Well, to your comment about a potential negotiation tactic, what we did hear from Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc this morning is that he feels he's working under the assumption that having these next couple of weeks will give the two countries, give representatives from both Canada and the U.S. time to potentially work together for an economic agreement that they can structure together and maybe have the chance to avoid these tariffs altogether. But when we talk about the premiers, they're also making this trip. 13 premiers in Washington, D.C. for the first time together as a group in Washington, D.C., pressuring American business interests, pressuring lawmakers, trying to convince them that this is going to be harmful. And we heard from Premier Doug Ford earlier today, Ontario Premier Doug Ford, saying that, he knows that President Trump knows they're there and that is the message that they're sending, that they won't go quietly. Here's more from Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew on the reason why they're there together on a united front.
The purpose of the trip here is diplomacy. It's the warm and hearty handshake, making the case that the Canadian-American friendship has been the best in the world for decades and decades, and we want to continue that for decades more. And so the offensive that we're making here is a charm offensive. It's a friendship building, a relationship building exercise. And of course, as Canadians, we're always going to be able to stand up for ourselves. We always put our Canadian values first. But in this moment, it's crucial for us to use this window that we have with no tariffs to try and keep things that way.
So, Michelle, a charm offensive, but maybe only to a limit, because we also heard just recently from BC Premier David Eby saying if we get hit, we will hit back. So that Canadian charm may only go so far.
Can't we all just get along? CTV Scott Hurst live for us at the CTV National Newsroom. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Canada's defense minister is in Brussels attending a meeting of NATO allies. And on the agenda, a U.S. call to increase the alliance's defense spending goal from 2 to 5% of GDP.
Right now, I'm focused on meeting the commitment that we've already made. We're working really hard to accelerate our spending to get to the 2% threshold that Canada has committed to. And I believe that that is achievable, and we're making very, very significant progress, and I'll share that with our allies. And then there is another conversation that will take place among all the members of the NATO alliance as to what the next level of investment might be required, given the changing circumstances and, frankly, the changing approach the United States is taking to NATO.
The minister says Canada is working hard to meet NATO's threshold and is trying to accelerate its defense spending to get to the 2% threshold. U.S. President Donald Trump has complained Canada is not meeting its NATO spending commitments.
Well, today is one of those days where if you are able to leave work early or maybe postpone any non-essential travel, you should. The snow is going to get going, perhaps with some light flurries early this afternoon, and then it will be heavy at times through the late afternoon, early evening, and at its worst, late evening and overnight. By the time all is said and done, we could see about 15 centimeters of snow in the city of Toronto. However, some communities closer to the shoreline of Lake Ontario are going to mix with rain, and that will lessen snowfall totals. We're going to talk all about it on the other side of this break. You're watching CTV News at noon. We'll be right back.
Well, we've been talking a lot about a winter storm, and today's the day. This afternoon, in fact, I think a lot of people are aware now. I just were wondering, how is it going to play out?
And you're kind of hoping you get missed. There might be a chance, but it seems like everywhere you look right across the province, there's a concern. And, of course, the drive home is going to be messy.
Yeah, this is a widespread system. Everyone will be impacted. The question becomes, what type of precipitation are you going to get? And it looks like we could see just a little bit of everything, especially the further south you are in the province along the shore of Lake Erie or Lake Ontario. A little more mixing expected to mix into your forecast, but for most, this is going to be a heavy, wet snow event. Weather is brought to you by the Presler Law Firm Injury Lawyers. You don't pay unless they win. Here it comes. We can see outside that there are some light flurries in some areas. There's been a little bit of light lake effect snow for the west end of the GTA, but nothing significant. If you're seeing flurries outside your window right now, that is the appetizer. Here comes the main event. We can see it on the satellite and radar. And yes, we have this patchwork of weather watches and warnings. Want to point out the winter storm warning. That's what you see in blue. And this is warning of upwards of, in some cases, 15 to 30 centimeters of snow, 30 to 40 centimeters from Algonquin over toward the Ottawa area, and the city of Barrie now included in that too. Areas as far south as Orangeville also. The freezing rain warning. Now this area is going to get some rain, some snow, and maybe about 2 millimeters of ice accretion. That could extend all the way into Hamilton, Burlington, but elsewhere around the Golden Horseshoe, we're looking at snow. And again, maybe 15 centimeters for the city of Toronto proper. The closer you are to downtown or the lakeshore, the more likely it is that you'll see maybe some ice pellets or some freezing rain mix in too. Let's talk about the timing. We mentioned 4 p.m. yesterday, and we're going to stick with that as the heads up time. It's possible this system will lag a little bit, but in any case, be prepared for mid to late afternoon that the snow is going to get going. It's going to be particularly unpleasant as we make our way through the mid and late evening. So there's about 10 p.m. and you can see that mixing line beginning for Niagara region, Welland, St. Catharines. It pushes further north into Hamilton, west end of the GTA, into downtown Toronto. Again, ice pellets, maybe freezing rain, perhaps rain. But elsewhere, especially to the north, this is heavy snow. It's all going to start to pull away as we make our way into Thursday morning, but there will be plenty of shoveling left to do behind it. Tomorrow, the winds are going to change direction, and we're going to be dealing with a little bit of lake effect snow. Here's another look at the snowfall amounts that are expected. Winds are going to be quite strong coming out of the east today and then coming out of the west for tomorrow. Temperature-wise, right now it is -6 degrees. Today at a glance, yeah, the snow really gets going into the evening. Overnight, our temperature rises to about 0. Here is the 7-day forecast. Temperature falls into Friday, -5. And then, yes, for Saturday and Sunday, we are looking at another snowy system. We're going to keep an eye on just how much we can expect with that one. Nathan, I'm going to send things over to you.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay. For burger fans in the city, a popular fast food chain is opening a new location at Yorkdale Mall today. It's the 3rd location in Toronto for Shake Shack. And CTV's Jessica Smith is live with a taste of what customers can expect. So, Jess, how good are they?
I'm talking about the best food I've ever had, or at least as of late, Nathan. I'm here with Billy Richmond. You're here with Shake Shack, a part of the family here. Talk to me what it means. I know the Yonge and Dundas location, super busy. I was at Union yesterday. I saw that one, super busy, but you guys are here now in Yorkdale. What made you want to open up here?
And we're thrilled to be opening in Yorkdale after the success of our first 2 locations, which have been just an amazing response. Yorkdale's our first foray into the suburban market, and we really couldn't think of a better place to open. Really excited to be in Yorkdale.
So there is a unique Canadian connection to all of the food we have on the table here. So talk to me about how we are keeping it Canadian.
Yeah, so supporting local is really important across our menu. I could walk you through a few of the things here. So you'll see our shack burger here, which is our classic. It's all Canadian beef, antibiotic and hormone-free burger. We've got our chicken shack, we've got our cream cut fries, then some of our Canadian exclusives on the left. We've got our I Heart Butter Tart Concrete, which is in collaboration with Broad Flour. Tastes incredible. You'll have to try it soon. We've also have our maple salted pretzel shake, and we have our really cool beer collab here, which we did with Bellwoods just on Ossington. So it's just a few of our products that we're really proud of.
It's so cool that there's a Canadian connection. I know obviously we're in that mindset right now. We want to continue that. But what's the reception been? I mean, I saw how busy it was at Union yesterday. I was there for a different story, but today the line's been nonstop. How does that make you guys feel?
Yeah, we're really proud of what we've been able to do and the experience we've been able to provide our guests. The response has been exceptional so far. People have been lining up, and just the smiles we get to put on people's faces, always great to see.
Speaking of people's faces, I want to introduce you guys to somebody now. This is Ryan. You were one of the first people in line at the Yonge and Dundas location.
Correct.
What is it about the burgers that sparks so much joy for you?
They're just the best burgers. The original smash burger had it first in New York City, and then they've been waiting for it to come to Canada, and they're just the best ones.
So you waited in line, you were outside, you were second, maybe third in line. What was it like, kind of that anticipation to get in there and be one of the first people in Canada to have a Shake Shack burger?
Huge. I mean, I've been waiting for years, like 5-6 years for them to come to Canada, so I took the day off of work, just like I did today, to make sure I could be one of the first few to try it, so.
Listen, I respect the love for the burgers. Ryan, thank you so much. And Billy, I have to say, the reception from everybody here has been so nice. Can you pick a favorite? It's like picking your favorite, pet or child, but can you pick a favorite on the menu?
I'm going to go with the I Heart Butter Tart Concrete. It's my favorite. It's really great to showcase our local partners, and it's something unique that you can't get elsewhere.
Listen, you have me at butter tarts. This is a special shout out to my dad, Carlton. He's a butter tart aficionado. So for him, I'm going to have to try. It's hard to do it with one hand. We'll get a little assist here. Billy, thank you so much. I will do my best to bring food back for you guys because I know it's going to be a stormy day. But for now, I'm going to send it back to the studio. Billy, thank you so much. And cheers, everybody. Butter tarts.
The lunch I packed is looking pretty sad right now. Enjoy, Jess. She's in her happy place. Thank you. Coming up, healthcare is a top issue in this provincial election campaign. We'll have more on the leaders' promises after the break. It is estimated 2.5 million Ontarians are looking for a family doctor.
It's why voters are eyeing which provincial candidate will offer them the best chance to get a family doctor. We get more from CTV Health reporter Pauline Chan.
Millions of Ontario residents are already struggling without regular access to a family doctor or nurse practitioner, and the Ontario Medical Association says the situation is getting worse.
4.4 million people are going to be without a family doctor by the end of next year.
And Dr. Dominic Novak says that has real-life consequences.
A few months ago, I was meeting with a person who hadn't been able to find a family doctor in over 6 years. They were bouncing around hospitals, emergency rooms, pharmacies, walk-in clinics, ended up having a delayed, completely preventable breast cancer diagnosis in the emergency room.
Family physicians have become a key topic in the Ontario election campaign. Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie is promising to spend $3.1 billion to hire 3,100 new family doctors by 2029. Crombie calls it the single most important priority of an Ontario Liberal government. She's also promising to boost the number of internationally trained family doctors and the use of fax machines and make appointments available on evenings and weekends. 2 days before the election was called, Doug Ford's Progressive Conservatives announced $1.4 billion to help connect every Ontarian with a primary care provider by spring of 2026. They're also promising 305 primary care teams for Ontario and putting $1.8 billion towards that. Merritt Stiles NDP are promising to put $4 billion towards hiring 3,500 new physicians over the next 4 years, and similar to Crombie, she vows vows to ensure every resident has a primary care provider. And the Green Party is promising 3,500 new doctors for Ontario over the next 3 to 4 years. It also promises to decrease the 19 hours of administrative paperwork doctors are currently required to do and boost the numbers of nurses and PSWs in Ontario.
We have had population growth. We've had complexity. People are living longer and sicker, so the needs are different in our healthcare system right now.
The OMA is not endorsing any particular candidate, but says our healthcare system is complex and voters should make it a vital factor in how they vote. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is out with its list of nominees for 2025. For the first time ever, Chubby Checker made it onto the list of artists under consideration, as did names like Outkast and Joe Cocker, among several others. There are also repeat appearances from previous nominees like Oasis and Mariah Carey. You can find the full list and take part in the fan vote at rockhall.com.
The Backstreet Boys have announced plans for a Las Vegas residency in a high-profile venue. The boy band will be taking over the Las Vegas Sphere for 9 shows in July. The Backstreet Boys will be the first pop act to play there after residencies from U2, Fish, and the Eagles. The residency will focus on the group's Millennium album, which hits like Larger Than Life and I Want It That Way, promising enhanced visuals thanks to the Sphere's immersive tech. U.S. inflation is proving very hard to slow down.
Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg brings us the latest in business.
Hello there. Here are your business headlines. Canadian and U.S. stocks fell in early trading today, with Toronto's composite index down about 0.5%. That's after underlying U.S. inflation in January came in at 0.4% month over month, the biggest jump since March of last year. Some analysts are now predicting no more interest rate cuts in the U.S. this year, as well as upward pressure on long-term rates, which will hike borrowing costs for companies. Quebec Premier François Legault says Canada should consider putting export taxes on products such as aluminum to create leverage in tariff talks with U.S. President Donald Trump's administration. Canada is the source of more than half of U.S. aluminum, and most of that's produced in Quebec. And finally, shares in Kraft Heinz fell 3% for a decline of more than 20% in the past year. The processed food giant forecast full-year profit below analyst estimates and says it will cut prices on key items to compete for inflation-weary customers. Now, the company warned that its forecast does not account for a, quote, significant worsening of tariffs, food regulation changes, and currency impacts. That's the latest in business. I'm Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg.
The number of electric vehicles sold in Canada is now approaching 10%, but some customers aren't ready to make the switch.
A major concern for drivers is how the range of electric vehicles is affected when the weather turns cold. CTV's Pat Foran has this consumer alert.
And we're off. We're going to drive this car until it's dead.
CTV's Tyler Fleming joined CAA and other testers to drive 14 all-electric vehicles from Ottawa to Mount Tremblant to see if they could make the 355-kilometer trip. The estimated range for EVs can drop quickly depending on cold weather and snowy roads.
What we wanted to get to the root of was what it was like, to drive an EV until it got to zero, and how long would it take.
As they headed towards their destination, EV started to run out of battery power. This one had 5%, then 432.
Now at 1% with 3 kilometers of range left.
When the test was done, there was clear evidence EVs don't go as far in cold weather.
Driving in temperatures between -7 and -15, on average, these vehicles drop anywhere between 14 and 39%.
The EVs with the longest winter range were the Chevrolet Silverado EV, Tesla Model 3, and the Polestar 2. Those with the shortest, the Hyundai Ioniq 5, Toyota BZ4X, and Volvo XC40 Recharge. CAA says it's important for anyone buying an EV to know the estimated range will be lower in the winter.
Making the jump to an electric vehicle is worrying because the range that they see on that sticker is likely not going to be the range that they get in the winter, and we're a winter nation.
The road test also highlighted the need for more charging stations.
We're out in the middle of almost nowhere.
CAA also wanted to see which EVs charge the fastest in 15 minutes. While some could only add 20 kilometers, the Tesla Model 3 was first with 205 kilometers added, followed by the Chevrolet Silverado and Equinox. The bottom line, if you're planning on buying an EV, do your homework.
If long winter trips is something that they're interested in and they're interested in an electric vehicle, shop around because there's some big differences.
Pat Foran, CTV News.
Food Banks Mississauga is laying off workers and canceling a number of programs, citing financial strain. The nonprofit says in order to keep providing the same services to those in need, it's going ahead with a restructuring that will slash its paid workforce by 16%. The organization says usage is at an all-time high, with 1 in 13 Mississauga residents relying on a food bank.
Team Canada is gearing up for the inaugural Nations Faceoff tournament with the opener tonight against Sweden. And TSN Bar Down's Jesse Pollock joins us with more on this. A lot of hype about this tournament. What is the reason for? What's the purpose of this mid-season best-on-best tournament?
Well, I think it's just so rare that you get to see the best players in the world take a break from their own teams and play against each other. And I mean, how often do we get to see someone like Connor McDavid play with Sidney Crosby, with Nathan McKinnon, against Austin Matthews, who's playing with guys like Jack Eichel, Kyle Connor. And as a Winnipeg Jets fan, it's going to be weird seeing Canada play against Connor Hellebuck. But, you know, some people haven't bought into the idea yet, but I'm all in. I think any way to find best-on-best action is what is there to complain about?
Yeah, nobody's complaining. Of course, we're going to watch this. Is this sort of preparing for the Olympics as well?
I think it's a nice appetizer for the Olympics for sure. There's a couple teams that aren't in this that are still going to battle hard next year. I think Czechia is going to be a good team at the Olympics as well. I think Slovakia they're always a threat. So yeah, I think this is going to be a nice little teaser as to what we can see next year. And I'm also curious to see if the team might look a little different next year. So a lot can happen in a year.
Yeah, you never know. So is Canada the clear-cut favorite?
I definitely wouldn't say they're the clear-cut favorite. I think it's kind of a toss-up between them and the U.S., but, you know, Sweden's got a great team as well. I think Finland is kind of the odd one out. Just they're missing some key players, especially on defense. They were already weak on defense, and they lost a couple of their best defensemen. And I think Canada, the U.S., or Sweden could win, but I think the U.S. is going to be a very tough beat, and I don't know. I think it's going to be them and Canada in the final.
If there's any weakness, what might that be for Team Canada?
I think everyone's probably looking at the crease right now, relatively speaking, at least. The goaltending for Canada is probably the weakest it's been in international competition, as big as this one in quite a long time. I mean, we've seen guys like Roberto Luongo, Carey Price, Marty Brodeur. They've all played goalie at these big tournaments, and now we have Jordan Binnington, who is getting the start tonight. He's won a Stanley Cup before. Aiden Hill has also won a Stanley Cup, but I mean, relative to other years, this is a very weak year for goaltending for Canada. But we'll see how important that is. I mean, they're going to have such good players playing in front of them, and they're still great goaltenders. They're capable goaltenders, so it might not end up being that big of a deal. But when you're playing against someone like Connor Hellebuck or even Philip Gustafsson for Sweden, those are some really good goalies. So I guess we'll just have to find out.
I mean, back in the day, I remember the Canada Cup, and then not that long ago, they had the World Cup of Hockey. Are we going to see tournaments like this more often?
I sure hope so. You know, sometimes we see the Hockey World Championships every year. Players are missing because they're still competing in the playoffs, or some players just can't go. They're injured. But I think we're going to have to see how this one goes. But there's a real craving for seeing these kind of competitions. And, yeah, I do think that there will be more of them for sure. And the Olympics is going to especially create a lot of buzz around international competitions. So, yeah. And, again, some people haven't bought into the idea yet. Come on, like let's Let's get going here. This is going to be a fun tournament.
Yeah, you know we're going to be watching, of course. All right, Canada plays Sweden tonight. TSN Bar Downs, Jesse Pollock. Thanks for your time. Take care.
Thanks for having me.
And coming up, a competition of a different kind. The Westminster Dog Show has awarded a brand new winner, the new top dog, after the break. There is a new top dog at the annual Westminster Kennel Club competition. There it is. Monty the Giant Schnauzer won the top prize at this year's dog show. Last night's victory was a long time coming for Monty, who had been in the final round the past 2 years. He is the first dog from this breed, the Giant Schnauzer breed, to win Best in Show. Look at that coat. Look at that smile.
Looks great. And you know, you got to take the dog out tonight no matter what, but maybe not too long on that walk.
Yes, and if you can maybe get out for the walk a little bit earlier today as opposed to later this evening, that might be a good call. We are watching for an incoming big winter storm. We've been talking about it for days now. One more look at the advisories in place. Winter storm warning, snowfall warning for Toronto, and freezing rain warning for Niagara. This is what it looks like, and this is what to expect. Heavy wet snow, strong winds, and yes, 2 commutes going to be impacted by this one. Here's what we're waking up to. Likely snow on the ground. Yes, that's a given. You'll have some shoveling to do. Temperature around 0 or 1 degree, which is just going to contribute to that snow feeling heavy. And then a look ahead to next weekend. Snow in the forecast again, Nathan and Michelle, for both Saturday and Sunday.
All right, more to come. Thanks, Lindsay. And that is CTV News at noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Lindsay Morrison and the whole team here at CTV News, thanks for watching. Have a pleasant afternoon. I'm Michelle Boudet.
And I'm Nathan Downer. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6. Have a great afternoon.